Okay, for this painting, quite a large painting, but it doesn't matter whether it's large or small or whatever. The process of painting this one, which I painted two other times as well. I painted another one almost identical to this. I made up a fair bit of the background. The other painting had the water coloured, but all the water was coloured, but the rest of the painting was in black and white. Now, the process of painting this was doing the background first. Whatever's further away you paint first, and then gradually come forward. So, for example, to illustrate that, do that area through there, do the rocks, then and these rocks here, then do the water on top. The last thing to go on is this figure here, which is of my wife, and that way all the background goes right in convincingly past her, right? So what you don't want to have is painting a figure and then you come to do these strokes and then you get a bit scared and you stop through there. It's got to be continual and effortless. So you paint whatever is furthest away. So if it's a seascape, you do the sky, then it's the water, and then you just keep on coming closer and closer to yourself. Now, having said that, you can do the blank areas, the big areas of colour first, but when you come to do the detail. So that's about the process of what happens first, second, third and fourth. Of course, this was done with a number of different brushes, some very large brushes to do these sort of strokes, and what you probably can't pick up from the camera is there's a lot of the raw canvas colour coming through, right? So not everywhere is actually being painted. And even though we say this is monochromatic, there's variations of that grey. So we have warm greys and cool greys, different sort of greys that are in here. It required also some very fine brushes. So to do the fine lines through here, you can't do that unless you've got the right sort of brush, you know. So you can't do that with the really thick one. You have to get a really good brush, and unfortunately they're quite expensive. So very fine brush, but largely they are big brushes, and with all paintings you paint in direction. So when you come to paint these rocks, you've got to paint them this way, then down. With water it's always kind of flat this way. You've got to remember everything's flat. The water's got to go into the landscape, into the landscape, into the landscape. That's probably all I want to say about this particular painting, is what went first, second, third and fourth, and one rock on top of another one, on top of another one. So normally whatever's furthest back gets painted first. What was painted first with this one is the background, largely, but you've got to be careful. Like in this area, I wanted the white to be really strong colour, so I kept that as white as possible. So I was very careful about coming into there, because if you goes black and making it white on top of black really doesn't give its vibrancy. So you've got to make sure that these areas here are as white as possible. But generally speaking, it's the background that's done first. Now, variety of different sort of techniques here. Very loose brush work, big brushes in some places, other places fine brushes. So it's a matter of, and with the grass, notice different sort of directions, because that's how grass goes, different sort of directions. And when you're painting, always you model it, so you go around the painting around the tree. And also what you'll notice is variations of different sort of greys in there as well, to give it a bit of sort of vibrancy as well. Don't want to say too much about that picture, it's pretty straightforward. Once again, some fine lines, but also if you can't do fine lines in white, often what you can do is get a sharp blade and scratch white into it. You scratch away the dark paint, and that will give you the colour of the raw canvas. Now this is part of a painting I've done in my hall. It's a bit hard to get the camera in here, but it's a very large painting, and it's done in a very flat style. So I've illustrated this painting because not everything has to be in a lot of realism and detail. This is a painting about various plants in the Tasmanian wilderness, but it's flat paint, it's poster paint, it's very flat and even, it's water based as well. And in this case, nothing has to be painted first. It's whatever, you could go in any particular spot and start painting. So you don't have to worry about background and whatever. It's just whatever takes your fancy. Of course, you need a good brush for this. The sort of brush that you need is one that's got quite soft hairs on it, and it was probably, in most of the case, it's probably quite a broad, very soft, synthetic sort of brush I would have used to do those lines there. This painting, which is of in Vanuatu, what was painted first was background through here, and it obviously changed a lot from the original painting. I put a canoe there and made things a little bit brighter, but that's done first. I moved around. It's important to get the background behind these figures through here, but it's acrylic, so that means if you make a mistake you can easily paint over it. So I kind of probably moved around this painting back and forth all over the place till I was happy with it. Nothing particularly special. There are some very fine lines here and there, so a variety of brushes, but largely these are quite small brushes to get these figures in and a little bit of detail, but not a huge amount of detail anyway. Variety of different colours on the ground, the purple and these sort of yellowy sort of colours and white in the on the ground to make sure it's nice and vibrant, and all the colours have been boosted up, of course. Yes, I recognise that this is a rather odd picture, but why I wanted to illustrate this one is because it's got a few different techniques. What we have is down through here, what we call dry brush marks. So it's paint with very little bit of water on it, and you use a large brush. So it's done in such a way that it looks like it's out of focus. So out of focus line through here, doesn't have to be sharp there. The hair, lots of those things are out of focus because they're slightly back, right? But what I wanted to be in focus was part of the nose and the mouth through here. I wanted that to be focused because there's nothing much else happening in the picture. So a lot of detail and sharp, vibrant colour and good contrast. So good contrast between the whiteness of the teeth and the very darkness in the mouth. But while there's a contrast here, not only is the contrast between the colour, the red and the green and the monochromatic background, the black and whites and the greys, but also the technique. So we've got some very dark areas and very light areas, but we've got very much out of focus areas, but also some detail. Now, what you'd notice is in through here is you can see through the raw canvas. So I haven't painted everywhere, so you don't need to paint everywhere. But there are some sharp lines through here, some very sharp dark areas. And once again, a bit of modelling. Modelling is when you paint around in those particular shapes. So on her bottom lip, it goes round. So that's how you paint. You go painting it this way and also that way. So you don't paint all in one direction. You paint up and around and over and round. You paint in the direction. So if you're painting my arm, for example, you'd be painting along this way and also along that way. So we paint in what's called planes, in those sort of directions. Now, the reason I included this painting is because it's a narrative piece, right? So this is a painting I did for our wedding, and it's got personal things in there, objects that were meaningful for us. And so everything in here tells a story. You may wish to do, that's a still life, so you may wish to do something like that too. Once again, you have to paint in the background first, then as you come forward, you do paint the things that come closer and closer. Now, having said that, you might decide that you're going to have the bare colours, the main colours in those things, and you could do that all at one time. But when you got to come and finish it off, you've really got to work from the back forward. Now, what you'll notice about brushwork is it's very lively sort of brushwork. This is quite rough canvas, and there's some parts that are very sharp and uses a fine brush, but there's some large areas there that have just been, thrown on, done very sort of in a lively manner. Now you might be wondering, why is Wayne so confident that you'll be able to paint on your own? Well, the reason being is I largely taught myself how to paint too. I went to 2 lessons, I think maybe 3 at university, just learning the basics about the paint, but really the lecturer that I had, he more or less said just go and find out for yourself. So that's what I did, and I think you'll be able to work it out yourself too. why I've included this painting is because, well, it's of me, and it's for, it was for an exhibition, but I didn't get, not for an exhibition, it was for a competition, but I didn't get in. But it's in my studio, and you'll recognise some of these paintings probably because I'll show you in these series of videos. But it's about, what I want to show is that technique. So obviously the things that were done way at the back have to be done first and come closer and closer. But it shows two different techniques. This wild sort of technique with the brush, the foreground and the figure is quite lively, as if I'm kind of moving. And there's also some very sharp, fine lines. So what I'm trying to say is, if you're going to do a subject like this and there's fine detail, then often you'll need a very fine brush, so it's worthwhile investing money in that. But largely all the others are quite large brushes. This is in oils, it's not acrylic, it's in oils. And the other technique is rubbing back, taking things away. So with a rag, scrumbling and scrubbing and carrying on, taking off some paint. But there's also, within this painting, there's also some raw canvas coming through in places as well. Now I'm showing you this canvas, did this one many years ago, to show you that this is a themed work. Now obviously it's about vegetation, but instead of just doing one picture of one particular sort of vegetation, it's been divided up into 4 areas, obviously, and so we've got gum trees and ferns and waratahs and fagus plants. So it's representing vegetation from one particular area. So you might decide in your painting whether you want it divided up, you've got 2 pictures, or you've got 4, or you've got 8, or just one. But you have the opportunity to turn one picture and to have related images or quite different images. The other technique that's in this one is out of background, out of focused areas. So around near here, it's out of focus, and out of focus, and out of focus. To do that, just be either really rough or use your brush in a rounded sort of manner, and make sure whatever you want in focus that's near you, close, is really nice and sharp and there's good contrast. So that's how to get things out of, in the background, out of focus. Just paint them sort of roughly, or paint them in kind of circles where sharp edges are taken away. Now I'm in my laundry and I can't get far enough back with the camera to take all this picture in. But why I'm going to show you this one is because it has a number of different techniques. Firstly, it gradates from being solid colour over here, the grey, and comes over through here. Now, doing this gradation over here is quite tricky, and you might have to use this part of your hand to rub it. You might have to use a dry brush. You might have to use a rag and put the paint on with a rag, or put some on or take it off. So that part was done first. Then comes this land here, and then one on top of another, on top of another. And once again, it's about taking some paint off as well as putting paint on. Then when we're coming down through here, it's very precise brush marks with a fine brush. So a variety of different sort of brushes used in this one. In this room, I wanted to show you this painting because of a couple of factors. One is it's done in oils, and oils take a long time to dry, and also they can be quite thick and textural. But I wanted to show you several points here because the subject matter in this painting is likely to be in your painting. So we have rocks. The way to paint rocks is in a really heavy sort of way. Think of them, paint heavy, solid, and paint them in a heavy, solid sort of way, right? When you come to do trees, think of it as a tree growing long and goes round. So on these trees we have reflections and shadows and whatever, and there's always a light and dark area. And remember that too. I've said that in the past, that wherever there's a strong light, there should also be a strong shadow as well, and you'll find that in these ones as well. In the water's a tricky thing to paint. And what you'll notice here is there's different colours in the water because the water's moving and it's reflecting both the colour of the sky, but it's also showing the colours underneath the water, which is the sand, often can be the sand or seaweed or whatever. So it's not just one flat blue colour. And And as I say, there's some other rocks through there. Whatever's done, what's in the background has got to be done first, and then we work up front. But when you come to paint rocks, paint them in a really heavy, tough sort of way. When you come to paint something that's light, like water or grasses or whatever, paint it also in a light particular way, in a physical way. So paint in a physical way. And also, if you're going to put some, when you do sand, put sand in. Sand's several colours. What we'll notice is that really dry sand further up through there, we'll see it often as being a little bit sort of white, if it's really, really white, really, really dry. Wet sand is often this sort of dark colour, and not an umber, but an ochre sort of colour. Sometimes when you get light on it in a particular way, it can be a little bit blue or a little bit purple as well. So it's about careful observation, really. That's really the key. This painting, as in with a lot of paintings that I do and other people do, will boost it up the colour to make it look more attractive. That's where you want to be. Once again, I won't take long with this painting. As with the others, I just want to illustrate a couple of points. Most importantly, you should be having fun. When you're painting, even though it's difficult, it should be difficult pleasure. I'm not saying every moment that you do is going to go, oh, this is fantastic. Sometimes you'll feel really quite depressed about what you're doing because it's not working, or people don't like it, or whatever, or you don't know what you're doing. But push through that, but it should be reasonably enjoyable. Why I'm showing you this particular painting is because when I put these sunglasses down on the rocks, and mind you, the sunglasses didn't have just a section in colour, it was all in colour, but this is the series where I do a small section that's in colour. But what I wanted to show you is this. Through careful observation, what I noticed when I was looking at the glasses, that there was a bluish sort of line through there on this piece of timber that was on the beach. And it was important for me to paint exactly what I saw, not try and work it out and think, oh, what colour is it? You just see the colour and you put it down. So whatever you see, that's how you do it. So in real life, there was this sort of purpley sort of colour that came in through there, and then there was this sort of slight rose colour, and it changed. So put down, so what I want to say is put down exactly what you see. Now, the other reason for putting this painting here is to show you that, yes, this part's in focus, but this part over here is out of focus. And how that's done is with a very broad sort of brush and going in more rounded sort of direction. And so that's out of focus and that's in focus. Now, the reason for showing you this particular painting, acrylic, but the surface has been varnished, right? So it's got a different sort of shine to nearly all my other pictures. Now, when you come to put varnish on, if you decide to put some varnish on, you've got to do a test somewhere else, because sometimes if you put the varnish down, it changes the colour or the tone, or sometimes brings up the painting that's underneath. So you've got to be really, really careful. But this one has been varnished. It looks slightly different from different sort of angles. There's a bit of a shine to it. So I'm reasonably happy with that. Nothing really particular to say other than, you know, what it is. It's just an acrylic painting. On the back of that picture of the palm fronds and the sunglasses, this is what we would typically have do for our paint, for our customers. You'd have a device over here, hanging device, that you would attach your cord to. Now, where you're at and what means you have to do that, I don't know. That might be a bit of a problem for you. Ideally, if you can have some sort of device to have there and have the cord on it, but you may not have those facilities. What sort of distance around? Around about a big handspan is probably enough, so when it's hanging you don't see a hook or a nail on the wall, so something like that. But if you don't have the materials to have hanging devices on it, don't fret. People can sort that out when they go home. The reason I got this picture is because it might be very typical of the sort of things that you might paint, although you'd probably paint people and canoes and other things happening. But it's got several features in here that are really important to your sort of painting. The first one is that it's got sky. Oh, I notice there's a bit of a scratch there. I'm going to have to fix that up. The sky is gradated down. That means it changes, you know, from a light to dark. I've done this in a dabbing sort of motion, and I'm not sure if I took some paint off or I put some paint on a bit of cloth and I dabbed it. This is all acrylic. The landscape through here is not just one blue. It might seem like it from way through here, but when you get up closer, there's different greens and blues there. There's blue because it's aerial perspective. As things go away further, they're more blue, more hazy, more grey. I've boosted the colours up a little bit more to make it more attractive and vibrant. The water, as we can see, this is an estuary, so the water's not sort of violent at all. It's just kind of sitting there. But there's lots of different colours in that water, and we can see there's the highlights. When the light's hitting it and bounces on a slight wave, it's a highlight, and that light comes back. Likewise, when there's a highlight, there's also a darker area, a deeper area where there's a bit of a shadow, so that's in there as well. But it's moving, so there's lots of little lines here and there, and the water goes behind those rocks. See that the rocks are really crisp. Now I've said earlier that when you paint rocks, you paint them in a really heavy sort of way, as if they're solid, and with water, it's a little bit more fluid, so you paint in that particular way. With rocks, there's different faces going in different directions, so that's how you have to paint. And because of that, we've got to be mindful of where the light comes from. So the stronger the light, the stronger the shadow. But having said that, shadows aren't one flat, even tone. They vary. They often pick up reflections from the rock, so often right down through here it's actually lighter than elsewhere. And then as it comes further out, it gets lighter as well. Shadows aren't always sharp. Sometimes there's parts of the shadow that are really quite soft. So careful observation, that's the really important thing. We'll notice that there are different colours within the rocks. They're painted in different angles. So however the rock is where the faces are, that's how it's done. Now, note the sand. The sand is not one even colour. There is a base colour through there, but there are light areas and dark areas, and wet sand is always darker as well. And where there's really dry sand, and sometimes because of the wind action, picks up different sort of sand and moves it to a spot. So the colour of the sand might look quite different from one spot on your beach to another. That's probably enough about rocks, the sand, and the sky. Now I've included this painting because it's a slightly different technique from some of my other pictures. Now I'm a little bit unusual, I paint in lots of different ways, but most people just have one particular technique, or maybe two, but I have quite a few, which has got its advantages and disadvantages. But this particular painting's got one particular technique, and that is, in certain places it's got a dark line through there, right? So I wanted to illustrate that. So some of your paintings, if you like this style, you might decide to do that. So it's not everywhere, and it's not a real even sort of line. It varies of how it goes thin and thick and elsewhere. But it's not everywhere, and I can't really explain to you why the line is in some places and not others. We can see with the water, with what I said before, it's got lots of different colours. It's got lapping foam, and lapping foam has a height to it, so when you come to do that, and often under the lapping foam there's a very dark area because there's a shadow. So it's all about careful observation. Where it's really bright, it's really a bright area equals a dark area somewhere. Now the technique on the rest of the face here is a variety. Let's say if you're going to do lips, lips aren't just one colour, so there's lots of different colour and variations of the one colour through there. Same with the skin, you'll see that there's different sort of tones in there. In some cases it's a ochre, sometimes it's a burnt umber or a raw umber. It's careful observation is really, really important. The hair's been done in a particular way where there's little hairs going everywhere. Some of those marks have been done with brushes, very fine brushes, but others been where it's been scraped out with a Stanley knife. Now, another point around here, and it's probably a bit hard to see from over there, but there is some reflected colour from this very bright hibiscus, which was modelled on one that I grew here in Tassie, and there's some of that colour is on a hand. It's very, very subtle, but it makes the picture a bit more lively. So careful observation is the key. We have a gradated sky, but it's a different sort of technique from some of the others. And once again, colours really boosted up. it's important to recognise that not every work that you're going to do is going to be good. I have my fair share of really dud work. This is one example. Look, first off, I imagine these birds flying, these are seagulls, and away they go, and I've done a similar painting to this work really well, but this one is a complete failure. It's just not lively. If there was other things happening, it might be worthwhile, but probably because of the technique I thought I'd use, monochromatic but with this sun, but it really doesn't work. It's a failed picture, and I just have to accept that. I've got another one which I'll show you, and it's a picture that I thought people would like, but not really, so I'll show you that one too. Now, this is a picture I thought would probably go well. I thought people in the city might like it because it's a city skyscraper, and there's reflections in the windows, and it took I think a fair amount of skill to make things sharp and whatever. But and there's just one chair here that's red. But really, no one's shown any interest in this painting whatsoever. The point I wish to make is sometimes we can do artwork and we think it's okay, and no one likes it. Just got to accept that. Sometimes we do duds, and we've got to accept that too. If you had a camera and there was 36 photos in that camera, you wouldn't expect to go out and all those 36 to be really good works. And the same with painting. Don't expect every painting that you do is going to be very successful, because it won't be. You're going to have your fair share of failures, particularly when you start off.